Frustration over the Trump administration's immigration policies brought thousands of protesters to the streets of Dallas this past weekend. They called for reform as the crackdown on undocumented migrants, foreign students, and even legal U.S. residents continues. Let's bring in CBS News Justice reporter Jake Rosen. Jake, good to see you. Along with protests, the fight continues in the courts over the president's policies. Where do some of those cases stand right now?
It does. And in the case of that tough student whose social media footage that circulated late last week and over the weekend showed her being detained by law enforcement officers and brought into a car in New England. And in addition to that case of Mahmoud Khalil, the New York Columbia student who was detained, both of those people have been moved to a ICE detention center in Louisiana where their court cases are playing out. There was a hearing in Khalil's case late last week where his attorneys either wanted the charges to be fully dropped or for the case to continue somewhere in New Jersey. The government has argued that the case should be handled in Louisiana where he's being held. These cases of students who have been detained, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, says they're going to continue. He said that as of Thursday last week that the administration had canceled 300 student visas, and that if it has to present information in court that is ordered by a judge to prove, at least on the government standard, of why they believe these people should have their visas revoked, he said that will continue and they will be happy to provide that information. So far, so few information, data points have come out about these people besides really what is out there on the internet of what these people have done publicly. And in that very high profile case before Judge Boasberg here in Washington, D.C. over those Venezuelan Tren de Aragua gang flights, there will be a hearing later this week on Thursday in which Judge Boasberg wants to hear the government's official argument in court after court filings last week as to why it did not turn those two planes around. This is Boasberg's kind of prerogative in the beginnings of this case to really see what the government knew and when and who at the White House made the decisions to not direct those planes to turn around pursuant to his verbal order to do so.
Yeah, and Jake, I also want to ask you about this because CBS News has learned that DOJ is considering merging the Drug Enforcement Administration with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. What exactly can you tell us about that?
Well, streamlining these agencies is not really a new thought in conservative government structure, especially for the ATF. There's been a movement for a long time to kind of either abolish it or shrink the size of it like the Trump administration is currently doing to so many other organizations now. In fact, FBI Director Kash Patel is currently the acting head of that organization, which really shows in kind of Trump policy speak what they think of that organization, to kind of have the FBI director be in charge of it and handle day-to-day operations there. CBS News can confirm that is accurate. It would be part of a streamlining process, and that Deputy Attorney General of the Justice Department, Todd Blanche, put out a memo last week asking for feedback on what people and inside the government thought would be best to do with these two agencies, whether it's to combine them or have them work more side by side.
And finally, Jake, we've learned two more federal prosecutors in Tennessee and Los Angeles were reportedly fired by the White House. The White House didn't fully confirm that to us, but we got this statement from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. She said this. She said the White House, in coordination with the Department of Justice, has dismissed more than 50 U.S. attorneys and deputies in the past few weeks. The American people deserve a judicial branch full of honest arbiters of the law who want to protect democracy and not subvert it. Again, that is coming from Caroline Leavitt. Jake, your thoughts here. Is this yet another shattering of the norms from this White House?
In terms of directly firing these line prosecutors, it absolutely is. Again, these are people on the lower rung of the totem pole across the Department of Justice and the legal world in the government in the U.S. People who are assigned cases to prosecute. Again, they are not appointed. They are more, regular run-of-the-mill government attorneys who, we see at least here in D.C. They argue a number of cases across the 170 plus that have been filed against the Trump administration so far. At least in one of these cases, the Trump administration may have at least a perfect fit in what they view as, quote, weaponization of the Department of Justice. There's an attorney in Los Angeles who you mentioned who was fired. He actually ran in New York for a congressional seat a couple of years ago as a Democrat and has spoken out against Donald Trump's, quote, weaponization of the government. Obviously, for the Trump administration, that's exactly the kind of person that they're trying to go after, somebody who has spoken out against now President Donald Trump while he was out of office.
Okay. CBS News Justice reporter Jake Rosen, thank you so much for your time today.